Love in Cidade De Deus. Love in this film is nothing but a brief moment in the eyes of the grand scheme of things, but I sort of feel like you're not supposed to just look at the grand scheme of things in this movie. You're supposed to look at the details. You're supposed to look at every bit that the director wanted to show of the city of God, which is a real city in Brazil, by the way. But I specifically want to talk about the portrayal of love, both the more obvious ones like Benny and Angelica, and the ones that I only really noticed in my second watch through of it, like love for the city or the difficulty to love. After growing up in an area so devoid of it. So let's begin. Benny and Angelica have a very complex relationship, but not in the way that the relationship is vague or obscuring, but rather that their love for each other is so deep that there's so many layers to it that I want to peel back. From spending all their time together dancing at Benny's farewell party to being willing to change their whole lives so as to run away together. It's beautiful. And as they describe it, in a scene of passion, they talk about how all they want in life is to run away and they want peace and love. And so they want to move away from the city and have an ideal hippie lifestyle. I feel like it shows just how much they loved each other, because being willing to make this big of a change for a person, you have to wholly trust them and be willing to lay down your all for that person, your whole life. And love like that is almost never seen within modern media, I feel like. From this decision, which will drastically change everything. And by everything, I really do mean everything. I mean, every person in the neighborhood and outer city, they all knew Benny. And so they were all more than happy to come to his farewell party and see him off, which is a great emotional segue to talking about the next form of love presented, the love for the city. Although this film is definitely not the most positive look at the city of God, but it is evidently still coming from a loving place. A great way to see that is by the subtle hints to the audience that the director, Fernando Meireilles, shows. They show the interdependent relationships that everyone has in the town, and not in the very cliche way in which everyone knows each other in the town, so they all love each other, but rather the residents of the area and their culture all interconnect them. You can see this from the way that they behave, to what not to do and what to do in order to live in such a city as the city of God. From the very slang that they use in the streets so as to be a person not to be messed with. I mean, everyone knows and understands it. And no one hates necessarily anyone, except for the bandits who are hated equally by everyone, except for the kids. Because even if you are hated by everyone, there's still someone in the city that loves you. And I think that's important. It's important that Fernando Meireles showed that. I mean, the love that there is for people, by its people, it's like how everyone loves Benny. It might be for all different reasons, sure, but they love him nonetheless. All of this goes to show the love for the city the director, Fernando Meireles, had, especially as instead of getting famous Hollywood actors to play these roles, they got real Portuguese men and women, which I'm not sure if they were really there in the town at this time, but I do believe it's enough for the director to choose actual Portuguese speakers to play these roles, whether fictional or not. And it just goes to show how Fernando truly does love the city of God. He loves it, and so he captures the true essence of it. He doesn't dismay anything. He doesn't try to shy away from the grimy aspects of it. He shows every aspect, even the good ones. But I think there was also some sort of difficulty to doing that. There was a difficulty to loving. The film isn't just all love and happiness, but rather it's a blend of the trauma and strife there is within growing up in a slum. You can get numb to it almost. You lose all forms of being able to love and go through your life never truly being able to grasp it, grasp how to love, and how to deal with all the emotions that tend to accompany love. The perfect example of this in the film would be the relationship between Benny and Little Z, which I think is probably the most intriguing. You see, the essence of it is a relationship between a man who has been conditioned from a young age to push away his emotions, as it was the only way to get through his environment and the constant need to be cold and unfeeling, and the pragmatic hippie who was able to love everyone around him, and their friendship which has cemented over years of childhood fun and love. The best way, I think, that Fernando could have gone about climaxing their relationship, which he followed through on, is by having one lose the other. Not when Benny was shot and died, but rather when he said he has to leave the city. It was a betrayal for Lil Z, a betrayal that cut so deep. He started an entirely new form of trauma in the events that had happened to knock out Ned. His inability to understand why his friend from childhood would just leave him. It was compelling, to say the least. It leaves him in such pain that when he died, that for the first time in the movie, he shows an emotion other than anger and joy. He shows a deep despair, one that is also highlighted through the fast, erratic lighting in the shot, and him yelling of sadness, yelling desperate to get his friend back, because he loved him, but he only realized that once he lost him. And I think that just goes to show that living in the environment that Little Z did, it does something to someone. But there's also a way to escape out of that. You can find a way to find love and happiness, which is kind of the whole point of Benny's character. And so for him to die, it was almost like accepting the fact that he's not going to escape the city. He's stuck here. He's stuck being the gang boss that he was born to be. He's stuck in the same loop his previous bandit progenitors were stuck in as well. And the cycle will repeat. But I still think the film was such a great watch for me. It was able to allow me to leave with something more than just a sadness for the events that conspired, or a sadness for the loss of Benny. It allowed me to leave with a new outlook on love. And I think Fernando does more than discuss the hardship of living in the city of God, but rather he discusses how living in a place as unfittingly named as the city of God, there's not just bad, but good, a loving good, as is in most places that is just one-dimensionalized into a slum. There isn't just the bad of living in a slum. There's the culture, the true and honest love